Here we go. Welcome to Shift, everybody. This is the podcast where we talk about radical accountability, and we can't have accountability without real vulnerability. So, vulnerability kind of starts with knowing who you are, knowing what you're about, right? So, with me today, I have a good friend of mine, Eddie Villa. He is a certified strengths coach, an entrepreneur, an author, which I hope we get into a little bit.
That's insane.
Right? Welcome to the club.
Crazy awesome.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
And father, 6, 7. I think you have 7 kids.
I have 7. Yes.
Amazing wife, beautiful family, and a phenomenal hat collection. I understand. So
I do. I have a crazy hat collection.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into all those things today. So Eddie, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to sit with me today, and we're just gonna have a conversation, see where it goes, and chat about all the things. One of the things I love about Eddie is his infectious personality, and he's such a great conversationalist. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, brother.
And let's start. I like to kind of start off with just give me, give me your story. Give me the quick thing so people kind of get to know you and people understand, where you've maybe kind of ran into some vulnerable situation. I mean, you've got a great story, and so let's just start there.
I'm gonna give you the big picture in just like a minute and a half. Like that's gonna be my goal here. Let's see if I hit that goal. So I grew up in a town called El Monte, California, and in El Monte, California, people don't do things like write books and become entrepreneurs. That's just not a thing. And I'm grateful that I was the kind of kid who constantly watched everybody to try to figure out what I wanted in life. And I didn't see examples of that. Like examples, I should say, I saw great people, but I didn't see examples that inspired me. So I thankfully got exposed to a world outside of El Monte and went down this amazing journey and looked for people who inspired me. And the first one was my wife. And she put me into a world of understanding how money works, how entrepreneurial, what the entrepreneurial life is, which I didn't know what that was because my parents weren't, obviously. And then through a lot of failure, I discovered that it's such a better life to take risks and to do things that are scary, to find out what's amazing about you, or me, I should say, to find out what's amazing about me so that I can just be that and use that to make money, grow a marriage, grow a family, and all those other things. The biggest, I would say the biggest setback I had was when I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to become an entrepreneur. So I just went and got a job with a very large company and I worked my butt off. And in 7 years, I got promoted 5 times. And then I realized that the more and more I grow in that company, the less actual life I'm going to have. And it freaked me out. And I didn't know this was happening at the time. And I'll wrap the story up on this. I didn't know it was happening at the time, but I began to self-sabotage. I began to make like silly mistakes. And the silly mistakes added up to the point where my bosses, like, they couldn't understand what was happening. And they started writing me up thinking that was going to correct it. And it didn't. And then eventually I made one big mistake that was just like cost me my job. So they fired me. I went to go work for another company and I had the same mindset there, and they fired me in less than 30 days. And that was when my life changed. And it started with a terrifying, traumatic experience that I'm so grateful for right now. In the moment though, it was the most painful thing. And what I also learned from that is that hindsight is 20/20. And every traumatic experience has a gift that you probably won't see in the moment. But if you expect that like the vision and the learning and the understanding of how that was a blessing will come. It will come. You will get it. And if you know that it'll come, then it won't take you 3 years like it took me to see it. It took me 3 years to see it as a blessing. That's a crazy long time. I lost 3 years of my life. Everything that was great about me disappeared. And if I could help anybody, just shorten that a little bit. Because you're gonna have experiences like this. That would be a great thing. So that's when I decided that my entrepreneurial ventures would be about helping people understand that.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny you talk about being kind of lost and trying to figure it out for 3 years. And I feel like I did that for the first 33 years of my life. Like just blamed everyone else for my problem. Just everything else was somebody else's fault and everything. And self-sabotage was just the order of the day, right? And so yeah, it's such a powerful thing. And you talked about failure and taking risks, and this new you that I've gotten to know in the last probably about 2 years now, 2 or 3 years,
Yeah,
has been, from my perspective, and I'm wondering what yours is, one risk after the other.
constantly.
I've not seen many failures. I'm sure things haven't gone the way that you wanted, and
I
so
need
I
to
have a
talk more about them then, because there's plenty. Go ahead.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
well, and so like from where I sit, there's this thing, and I know you're going to get it. We'll get into this, but like you really, really, really are living more than just about anyone else I know in radical purpose. Like
Yeah.
really, like you have thrown everything at your current, you know, job. And I hate to call it a job because I don't think it's a job, it's your lifestyle,
It's a
right?
mission.
It's a mission. Yeah, that's a good word. And so from where I sit, even if things aren't going the right way, you're because you're living so much in purpose, I almost feel like you can't fail.
I would I can't fail in the way people look at failure.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then there's different, what I love about this concept of failure is there's like one side of failure, which is it's bad. It's bad. It's a bad thing. You shouldn't do it. You should be safe and be careful and so on so that you don't fail. So there's that one side. And then on the other side would have what I would call the veil, right? We'll call it like the wool being pulled, over my eyes or
Yeah.
off of my eyes. It's that the value of failure. And this is so hard to remember because I think we are all naturally in like try to avoid failure as much as possible. And I don't go looking for failure, but I definitely go into everything with, hey, this could fail. This completely set you
Yeah.
back. And I had to like understand through a really great book, which is called Failing Forward by John C. Maxwell. Love that book. I recommend it for everybody who's got a failure issue. What I
Awesome.
learned is that if I'm trying to prevent failure or brace for failure, I'm not going all in with who I am. And even if that sets me back, there is going to be a valuable lesson that I'm going to learn that's going to be more valuable than success.
Yeah.
And I just have to keep telling myself that because it's the only way that I can be me at a high level. If I don't embrace failure as a positive, then I'm only going to hold back, which is never going to do anybody any good.
Which is probably why, as an observer, I don't see you failing. Right.
Right.
And I think you and I have a very similar, like I struggled with failure. I was one of those people for years. I'm not going to let this fail. This isn't going to fail because I had that traditional viewpoint of failure as weakness, failure, like you got to do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so before my wife and I got into the network marketing business that we're in and started to build something that created real time freedom and, gave us the space to do the personal development that was necessary.
Yeah.
I was in the food truck industry and we had a food truck that was failing. It was the concept is not really work for food trucks, but I was determined to not let it fail and said on multiple occasions, I can't let this fail. I was sort of at the end of my rope, like sort of like what you were talking about and trying to figure out what you wanted or what you were doing. And I didn't recognize that regardless of where I worked, the issues were going to be the same because I was the common denominator in those. Right.
Yeah.
And so I remember saying, I can't let this fail. And in that process, like we lost our house, there was a point where we had like $6 in the bank. And
Yeah.
it was like not noticing that, like in my attempts to not fail, I was crushing everything else. And it took a while for me to recognize, like, so I have very different views on failure now. I really believe that like there is no failure. There's only feedback, right? Like
Sure.
it's just, can I take lessons from this? Can I learn this? And I've applied that also to like, I don't think people try. Like people always say, well, I'll try. And I'm like, no, that's just not doing. Like you could try it, but that's just not doing. Or people say, well, I tried to do this, and I'm like, but you did it. Like, if you try to do something and you do it poorly, you didn't try to do it, you did it. You just did it not to the level that you want, right? And I feel like if we can shift that mindset and help people recognize those wins as wins and not failures, they're going to be, it builds confidence and it helps you like and look at the lesson. So I love that you share that. um
Yeah, I think that when listening to you talk about the food truck, and I'm just thinking that the like when and I've had those kind of setbacks where, you know, you lose everything, you know, with losing the house and you know, and all those things. Like I can see how the world would look at that as a failure,
mhm.
but it's really just a, this is what happened. What can we take away from this? It
Yeah,
almost feels like to me, the failure is to say, I guess I'm just gonna give up.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Or the failure is, I'm not going to look for the valuable lesson that's inside of this setback.
yeah.
Right. Because, and it's a setback only because that's not what I was working towards. Right. Right.
Yep.
I'm assuming your goal wasn't to do that. And
Yeah,
so
of course not.
it's like, if you don't achieve the goal that you
Yeah.
wanted, then we can call that a setback. But really, it's just feedback, like you said. And
It's
it's such a great way to look at it.
yeah, it's the season. I mean, really the failure was not being wise enough to go,
Right.
this
That could be a
isn't
failure.
working.
Right.
Right. So the lesson I was able to pull from that was like, oh, failure is a part of success. Failure
Oh
is a
gosh,
part
yes.
of growth. Right. Like, cause I go to I mean, there's even, so I work out, you know, pretty regularly. And when you're lifting weights, one of the ways that you lift is you lift till failure, like till you can't lift it anymore.
Right.
So in that context, you're striving for failure.
Yeah.
You're working till you can't physically do it anymore, and that is how you build the muscle to move to the next level. So it's interesting the context that we put it in, because we get so wrapped up in who we should be, which I think is a really good way to kind of lead into like what your mission is right now, because it's almost impossible to talk to you without talking about strengths. And for those who, I mean,
Yes, it
before I
totally
hit
is.
record this morning, we had a 5-minute conversation about strengths.
Yeah.
And it's just it's become, you know, such a, I don't want to say it's your identity because it doesn't define you, but it is definitely part of your mission. It is definitely
Yeah.
like interwoven in just about everything, and it's kind of how you see the world. So I would love for you to kind of tell people who may be watching or listening who aren't familiar with Gallup Strengths, what that's about, what drew you to it, and what that mission looks like for you. Because for me, I really, really believe there's a couple of things that I've shared with people, but like Gallup Strengths is one of the things I can look at that absolutely has changed how I work, how I communicate with my wife. It's improved my marriage. It's really improved my relationship with my kids. Um,
Yeah.
and my whole point with this podcast is to try to move people forward in some way or another, and that's why you're here. So
I'll get kind of vulnerable here about this because I have a major fear when it comes to being labeled as the strengths guy. So when I first, and this is actually really cool when you think about, and I know you're into the hero's journey, right? You understand, you know, the Joseph Campbell
mhm,
and how Star Wars plays into it, and how the
yes,
heroes always rejecting the call to action,
hmm,
right? This idea of strengths, just to help all of the listeners who don't even know what this is, I'll be brief. Gallup is like the company, they're the polling people, right? They're the company that if you wanted to know how the world feels, Gallup would be able to tell you that. Like that's insane. They could poll millions of people. Okay. And so they use these resources to help people through this guy named Don Clifton, who's amazing. He passed away pretty recently, and a few years ago, and he wanted to help us understand how to how to use our talents instead of focusing on developing weaknesses. His initial focus was frustration with the corporations of the world, who are always trying to ask people to be something they're not, and of course with the school system, the education system as well. And so he created this resource by polling millions of people. This isn't some guy who talked to a bunch of people and go, oh, I know what your strengths are. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like there's a lot of stories, especially when you look at the Myers-Briggs, the way Myers-Briggs started. It's got a creepy, you know, history. But anyway, The point is that you learn that you have 34 strengths in a specific order that is non-duplicatable. In other words, no one in the history of the world or in the future can ever have that combination of strengths. And you're just going to, for those that are watching, you're just going to have to accept that, because I'm not going to go into all the numbers right now for the sake of the timing here. But what's great about strengths is it helps you understand what makes you unique. And then when I first got introduced to it, I was in a place where I needed that so badly, because I was tired of feeling that like I had to be something I'm not in order to have something that I want. What I would learn later is that my number 8th strength is competition. And what is competition? Competition is being energized by comparing yourself to other people. Like I would see other people doing things and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do that, but I want to do it my way and I want to do it better. Right. And I always thought that was a bad thing until I understood the strength and how it works. And it helped me understand what's wonderful about me. So when I started to get interested in this, I became massively obsessed and started coaching people for free. Like I stopped charging for coaching. I even stopped building our network marketing business, which was thriving at that time, because I needed to understand this so badly. And that's when my, just curiosity became obsession. And that's how like missions start, these curiosity become mission. But where I rejected this was when I realized that I could do things with strengths. Like I could have a person who I've never met before give me their strengths report after working with thousands of people and understanding this report on a certain level. And I could help people understand themselves, even if I've never met them before. And that was getting weird. So weird that people were starting to say, it's like he looks into your soul. It's like he's like a fortune teller or a tarot card reader. And as soon as I started hearing all that, I was like, no, that's not what I want to be doing right now. I wanted to help people be entrepreneurs. I wanted to help, people overcome fears. I didn't want to be like some fortune teller that people have to come to all the time. I didn't feel like that was empowering people. And so I said, no, I'm not doing this. But after I said, I'm not doing this, I couldn't think of anything. I couldn't stop thinking about how it was helping people and how I wanted to do it. And it was that constant like nagging, like, dude, there is something magical about what you've done. You can't reject this. And so I said, okay, fine. I'll be the strengths guy. Fine.
Yeah.
And when I embraced it, that's when I got real good.
Yeah. See, I love that so much and I love that you brought up the hero's journey, because I get made fun of in my household because I think that Star Wars, if you watch Star Wars and you follow the philosophy behind Star Wars, don't worry about like the CGI and the other stuff and all the window dressing. If you really pay attention, like you could just live an amazing life.
Yeah.
Because there's so much good stuff in there. But the other thing too is like you talk about when you embraced it, right? That's when things started to take off. And I feel like I'm in a similar situation now because I don't know. I know why I'm doing this podcast. I have a why, and it is so far from what I thought I would be doing at this point in my life.
Exactly. That's exactly what I went through. Exactly.
So activator and achiever are really high. They're my 1 and 2 strengths, and learner's my number 5. So obviously I want to learn stuff and I want to dive in, and so like that's fun for me. And a lot of the relationship strengths like harmony and empathy and those things are so low for me that like I really despise self-marketing and self-promotion, and like I don't take selfies to me are like just weird. Like it, and so for me to have a thing where I have to tell people, come listen to me ramble is really, really hard. And at the same time, I can't not do it. Like I get emotional when I tell people like really why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And it's like I almost feel like a reluctant participant. So like when you talk about the hero's journey, that resonates with me because I've put out stuff and I'm like, oh, the audio's horrible, or that didn't work, or did I really say what I meant to say? And for a lot of people, that would shut them down and turn it off and be like, this sucks. It's no good. And I'm like, wow, that kind of sucked. Okay, let's do it better next time. Because I can't like help not. And my wife luckily has kept me in check that it's not a distraction from the main thing. Like we're really working to keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
And I just don't watch TV anymore because I have to do this also, right? Like it's pretty crazy. And you actually are really catalytic in helping me to love who I am because I struggled for so long because I like not to toot my own horn, but I'm a force to be reckoned with when it's time to get shit done. Like that's what I do. And that's great, but it also brings a level of intensity that a lot of people that I work with or like that I'm married to maybe can't necessarily deal with.
Yeah.
And working with you and understanding our strengths has helped her be able to identify when I go into that mode and recognize that's just how today is going to be because that's who he is.
Yeah.
And like it's helped me to recognize that I will never be like the empathy person like my wife is.
Yeah.
Like I had total strengths envy for the first couple of months that we knew about strengths because I was like, I want to be harmony, I want to be woo, I want to be. And then it was like, bro, you're never gonna be that.
Yeah.
And you touched on uniqueness, which I really want to kind of unpack a little bit because I think in an attempt to help people get more accountable and vulnerable, them understanding that they are like one in the planet ever for time, they're so infinitely unique and they're so gifted that if they could recognize that and own that, then everything does start to kind of go better. It's not perfect. We still have crappy days
Yeah.
or crappy hours or whatever we choose it to be. But it does make a huge improvement in that. So I'm curious if you can sort of
I
you don't
can
have to run down the
simplify that.
numbers, but like what does that look like for people? Like help people understand how truly unique they are.
Well, I'll make it simple. Think of like if you've got 34 strengths in a specific order, and the order is important. It's crucial. If two people stand in front of me, this is probably never going to happen, but if two people stand in front of me and they have the exact same strengths report, but their number one and number two are transposed, right?
Mm-hmm.
That fundamentally changes who they are. And that tiny little difference has an infinite amount of, you know what I mean? It's like the butterfly effect, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Has an infinite amount of changes because no two people can have the same experience. So when you take this 34 strengths from 1 through 34, first let's look at it like a combination lock, right? The number of combinations is massive. And the number of combinations massively outweighs how many people have ever been on the planet. Massively. So like there, you can actually look this up. It's really weird. I was like, how do you measure this? But people have apparently that by the year 2050, there will have been 130 billion people born. And the combinations
Okay.
of 34 are way, 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 way bigger than that. Like in the quintillions, okay? So like probably
Amazing.
even more than that. So there's that, right? And then there's, you know, your daily experience, like where you were born, who you were raised by, who you talk to every single day. Those experiences, good and bad, have also given you an infinite amount of combinations of experiences.
Yeah.
So when you look at it that way, it helps you understand how you are not alone, but you are unique, completely unique. You have a perspective that no one in the whole world could ever have or could have ever had. But when it comes to our problems, right? What are our problems? You know, maybe we don't make enough money. Maybe we don't have enough time to do the things that we love. Maybe the people around us aren't being as supportive as they need to. Maybe we suffer from really difficult physical ailments and diseases or problems. But if at least one person in the history of time has ever had that problem, which I don't see how they couldn't, right? If at least one person has had that problem, then that means that the problems we have are common and who we are is infinitely unique.
Yeah.
But what causes sadness and depression and loneliness and keeps people from understanding the value of failure and so on is thinking that the opposite is true, that the problems that we have, no one could have ever had this and could ever understand. That's a bullshit story.
Yeah.
But if we think that, and then we simultaneously believe that who we are is common and anybody could have these talents and anybody could have these strengths that I have, or even not even seeing them as strengths, then we have completely kept ourselves out of the game. The game of, we'll call it the game of life, the game of finding joy and bringing value to other people. So when we flip those, we see the value. And then I'll end on this. If you choose to believe, which is the truth, that you are infinitely unique, that means that you have a set of talents and skills that nobody in the world could ever have, and of perspectives that nobody could ever have. And when you own them, then the world gets to benefit from them.
Yeah.
Even if you can't see what the benefit is, the world gets to benefit from it, because if you don't, then the world doesn't.
Yeah.
Or you can say your world. And your world could be up here in your head. Your world could be your family. Your world could be your business, or your community, or the world itself.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's in helping people understand that no matter what it is, it's needed.
Yeah. It's so fascinating to me because we do have it flipped, right? We think our problems are so unique. And realistically, like from this perspective, I talk to a lot of guys, and we talk a lot about accountability and vulnerability, trying to like kind of shift some of what that masculine perception or narrative is.
Yeah.
But also I try to tell people, like, I talk to a lot of guys because I'm a guy, and I find that's where I feel most comfortable. But we're talking about men's issues. We're talking about human issues. These are
Human issues. Yeah.
We all feel scared. We all feel inadequate. We all feel fear.
Yeah.
We all feel these things. And it blows me away sometimes when I start to think it, like, how universal some of the things that we're dealing with and have been dealing with for eons is, and yet we feel like all of our stuff is so just unique to us. And the way that you described that and how we flipped that was really great, because one of the things I want to talk about too is I want to dispel this myth, because I know people are going to hear this and they're going to go, let me go look at this Gallup thing. Let me go take this test. Let me go. Well, trust me, I know some of you are thinking, I need another personality test. Like I need a hole in my head between Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and True Colors. And like, there's like, when I was introduced to strengths, I was like, look, I've taken the tests. Leave me alone. I'm not doing this. This is not a personality. This is so different from those things that they're not even like in the same sport. Like they're just completely different.
They're playing a totally different game, man. It's like if I tried to play Michael Jordan on the, right now on the court, it would be me. We'll call it a personality test versus Michael Jordan, the strengths assessment. And it's a whole other world. It's a whole other level.
Yeah.
It's just competition.
Yeah. So if you're thinking that it would be a waste of your time, or you've done those tests, or you've been down the Enneagram road, I promise you this is a whole different ballgame. And once you get into that, you'll be slightly overwhelmed. You could check out Eddie's podcast, Unleash Your Strengths. Are you still doing that? I know you did a couple seasons.
I get into phases with it. I'll do 4 or 5 in a row, then I'll slip away for a bit. I'll do 4 or 5 in a row. I'm loving the idea of podcasting. In fact, I've got like a nice mic setup and my, what do you call it? Mixer right here.
Yep.
So now we're doing an Unleash Your Teen podcast. We can help teenagers understand their strengths.
Right. Yeah. Your daughter's like on fire with that.
She's crushing it. And then my wife and I are going to get back to podcasting as well. So I'm a huge fan of podcasting. I just want to go all in with it. Because it's so much fun. But anyway, so yes, the Unleash Your Strengths podcast is still going. I just sporadic with
there is, you unpacked each of the 34 individual strengths at one point. So if you're new to strengths and you're diving into that, go listen to those. Like, and Gallup's got a really great theme Thursday that I liked.
It's cool.
And they kind of do that, but you get two different perspectives, because I think Gallup's great and super grateful for Gallup. Eddie puts a different spin on it that I think is way more relatable. Maybe that's not the best word.
This is where I get vulnerable, man, because I'm like so nervous whenever someone goes and they listen to me talk about strengths and then they go expecting to get that sort of information from Gallup. Gallup does not support the way I teach strengths. So I wrote a book called Unleash Your Strengths. It's available now. You can get it at unleashyourstrengths.net. I gave this book to Gallup and said, hey, I'm assuming I have to get your approval and licensing and all that stuff. I don't even think they read it, Keith. I really don't even think they read it. They sent it back to me and say, hey, we don't need a licensing on this. You just have to put you have to adjust a couple of little things, write copyright and registered and all this other stuff on some words you use. But they also made sure that I put in a blurb that Gallup does not. This isn't a Gallup endorsed product. And I gotta tell you, man, I was so happy that they did that, because now I'm free. I produced the book. It's now being shipped. People are getting in their hands, which is insane.
Yeah.
But the biggest vulnerable here, like, I am afraid, and I'm going to be real honest, I'm terrified that people are going to think that what I'm doing is what typical strengths coaches do. And I've learned that they don't.
Yeah.
So many of them don't talk about strengths the way that I do. And I'm not saying that that's bad or wrong. Gallup, everything Gallup does is amazing. It's perfect and it's wonderful and it's true. It's just the way that I do it um, helps understand a little bit more quickly, so that you don't have to know everything
Yeah.
about each of these strengths. And it sends you down a good rabbit hole, one that's productive, versus here's just a whole bunch of knowledge that you have to
Yeah.
figure out how to apply to yourself.
I think that's a really good way to describe how you do what you do, because knowledge is great, but if you don't know how to discern it, if you don't know how to sort of navigate it and apply it, then it's just knowledge. Like, there's a huge disconnect between like knowledge is power and applied knowledge being, like, in my opinion, the actual power. Like,
Yeah.
you can read all the books in the world, but if you don't understand the context and the depth and the all the other bits and pieces of it, and you don't take the time to apply it, because I've read books that I think are amazing, and we talked about this a
Yeah.
couple
Otherwise,
like
why are
last
we
week.
learning it? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like I've read books that are amazing, um, but they don't. If I don't apply them, I don't know if they actually work for me. And sometimes I'll apply them and go, "Oh, that doesn't work for me right now. That's not fitting in. Maybe so I'll table it and maybe I'll use it later, or I'll know that it's there." So I think that's important that you talk about, how you navigate those different things. And different people, because they're unique, are going to be in different situations. Like, you teach about bottom five, which Gallup does not.
Does not. I talk
And
about domains. Gallup doesn't talk about that at all.
and the bottom five piece to the strengths conversation, game changer for me after learning about strengths. Huge thing. But I do want to dispel this one myth, and I think you and I have talked about this, but I see conversations in like message boards or places where people are talking about strengths, and they'll put up their strengths report and then say, "Tell me what job I should do."
Oh God.
and and
Oh.
it it drives me crazy, because Gallup is not here to tell you what you can do.
No.
It's here to tell you how, like
How
who
you
you
can do the thing
are.
that you want to do.
Yeah, because we can all do, right? It's like that. You can be anything you want to be. Like,
Sure.
you can do whatever you want, whatever you feel called to do. Gallup doesn't tell you can or can't be a doctor, you can or can't be a lawyer. It tells you, if you're going to be a doctor, here's how,
Yeah.
right? So can you dive into that a little bit? Because I know so many people who
Absolutely.
think it's
This is
like a
where
roadmap.
this, I'll be honest, there's a movie that just came out called Persona, and I'm not promoting this movie. It's actually a really crappy documentary. You can tell that, so all documentaries are here's my point of view on this subject.
Yep.
You can tell that the agenda of the person who was making that documentary, what's wonderful about them. Did I break up? Did you get me?
Yep. You broke up a little bit. Let's do it again.
Okay, I'll repeat that because I want everybody to hear this.
Yep.
So the person, you can tell that the person that made this documentary was out to prevent people from understanding what's wonderful about them. So they created this argument that taking strengths assessments, now they don't talk about Gallup at all. They only focused on what they said was the most popular, right? They went after what they thought was the top dog, which is Myers-Briggs.
Okay.
And they showed how Myers-Briggs is being used to discriminate against people. So when we're talking about how, look at my strengths to help me pick my job, this gets down that scary path of where the evil side, I would call, of personality tests, where there are companies that use personality tests to discriminate from, like, say, hey, you're not the personality we're looking for based on your answers to these questions. That is so dangerous, because you can't use strengths assessments as some sort of a fortune telling, no, sorry, not fortune telling, but future predicting device. Just because a person has certain strengths does not mean they're going to excel or not excel at what you want, what you're looking to hire them for. So when we use it as some sort of a tool to help us save time with only having the right people, there are so many this goes down a very deep, dark, evil path. Like,
Yeah.
please don't do that. What I would teach people is, first off, if you're going to watch Persona, watch it because you're curious, but like, don't buy into the dogmatic thing that they're trying to teach you about how bad this is. What it does is to say, okay, look, what does your heart call you to do? What do you feel in your heart passionate about doing? And then once you've decided, okay, I'm going to do this, now let's take your strengths assessment to see how you're going to excel at this
Yeah.
and be who you are through that process. That is a very healthy and exciting way to go through trying to figure out what you want to do for a living and so on.
Yep. Yeah. I think
'cause
it's
crazy.
There's so much out there about like, be authentic, be genuine, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
would say that I was not able to really step into authenticity until I knew who I was,
That's it.
right?
That's right there.
Like,
Yeah.
you want to be authentic. And I mean, I sometimes I feel like I'm going to roll my eyes right out of my head when I'm scrolling through Instagram or looking at some of the, influencers and stuff. And I was like, you're talking about authenticity through 17 filters on your photo. And like, it blows my mind. I'm like, how is it that, like, and then like they do like the pullback shot where there's like 6 cameraman and lights and like I can't, like, authenticity is just being raw, right? And yes, you want to put your best foot forward and you want to look good, and maybe you need, like, I mean, I got a clean shave today for getting on camera and that sort of thing. Like, I get it.
Looks
But
good.
also at the same time, like, knowing who you are, and this is the big thing, man. Like, and I don't want to like beat a dead horse here, but like, learning to love who you are and going, this is me, right? Like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I got flaws. I got work to do. I got growth is available to me and I need it. And this is who I am. And like, there's a huge level of freedom in that. And then it becomes like, I can really dive into what I want to do, and recognizing that the people who align with that, they're going to show up. And if I just keep doing what I'm supposed to do and being who I am, I'll find my tribe and we're going to crush it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think more people need to recognize that and understand that. And the work that you do is super vital in that.
Well, I appreciate that. What hurts me is when I see people tell people just be yourself. But what I'm seeing, oops, sorry, hold on one second. I'm about to make some noise. Let me turn that off. So what I'm seeing whenever people, and look, I'll even go as far as to say Simon Sinek himself, who has written a couple of my favorite books.
Yeah,
I love Simon. But Simon put up on one of his Instagram pages, be you. Okay. And for me, like, if you're not going to teach me how to be me, like, I find that very, what is it when you tell someone what to do, but you don't even know how to do it yourself?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's
hypocritical, or
maybe hypocrite, maybe, but
condescending. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
But it's like, there's no accountability there. Like, if you're going to tell me to be me, okay, how do I do that? Like, if I were to ask people who, let's say, don't have the strengths assessment, just be you. Like, people are going to be like, oh, I am always me, but people don't like it or whatever. You're like, there's so many problems with that. When you tell someone to be authentic, just telling a person to be authentic solves nothing.
Yeah.
Even if it's true, and it really is true, but how am I supposed to know what being authentic means? Like, I have a feeling for who I am, but I only aware of the dangers of being that.
Yeah.
What I love about strengths is it helps me to articulate that, to like say, oh, this is me. Like, here's for an example. I wave my hands when I talk. This is what people of high communication do. They have hand gestures and body movements. These are the kind of people that even when they're on the phone with somebody, they pace and they move their hands. Like, that's a thing, right? Yeah. Okay, that's a 100%. Thing. Okay, so when I say be you, I say wave those hands more. Get your body way into what you say. When you're on stage and you're speaking to people, really use your body.
Yeah.
That's being authentic. That's specific. Like,
Yeah.
that's amazing that we
And
can do that.
the energy behind that is like the intangible, right? Because when you're being yourself in that respect and you understand what that means, you're happier, you're more comfortable, you're more genuine, you're going to say what you really mean. You're not going to
Yep.
be looking for ways to like solve it or present what you think they want to hear.
Yeah.
My wife and I we joined Toastmasters at the beginning of the year.
Oh,
uh,
cool.
in an attempt. I was like, well, I'm going to launch a podcast. I'm going to join Toastmasters. I'm going to get better at public speaking, and we've done public. I mean, we've spoken on stage together before. Like, we've done public speaking, and I feel pretty comfortable talking about the things that I know how to talk about.
Mhm.
And I wanted to get better. And so I enjoyed it much more than I think my wife did. And there were some things that were valuable in it. And there were other parts where it was like, there's scripts that you have to follow. And there's what's the word they use? I want to say reviews, but that's not the word they use. It's like evaluations, right? So like you
Okay.
people will evaluate your speeches. And a lot of times what I found was the most prepared, read, like sort of speech got the better evaluation. But the ones that I liked the most were where the people were really just speaking from the heart. They maybe said or ah, more than what's acceptable. And it was interesting because I had this like push pull. There was some tension there because I was getting value from it and I enjoyed it. And I ended up having to drop out because my kids' schedules and all the thing. Like, it's like, okay, it's list of priorities. That one got
Sure.
cut. But there was tension there because there was some of it that I was like, they're kind of pushing you in an inauthentic
Oh gosh,
space.
yes. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
And it's like, I want to be a better speaker and I gotta be me, man. Like, I gotta
Yes.
be who I am, and that should be honored in an evaluation, right?
Right.
It's tricky.
Absolutely. If you're going to be authentic, that means it's required that you break the rules.
Yes. There you go. Write that down, folks.
It's going to be
Yes.
required that you break the rules. And so if you got, this is what would, okay, so I love the idea of Toastmasters practice. We should all be practicing. What I
Mhm.
don't love is people evaluating my talk when it comes to, oh, well, here's the rules. Did the person follow the rules? I want to say F that so loud. And then I want to say F you for following that. That makes no damn sense. How about we look at a different criteria? How did you feel when you listened to the person talk? Not
Mhm.
did the person say, did the person, this is another thing I know in Toastmasters, they teach you how to stand still and keep your hands down. That is the opposite of who I am ever going to, I will never be that
Yeah.
person.
See, we didn't experience because ours was all online. Like, we're in the middle of a thing where nobody can get together, right? And so this was
Right.
like an online thing. And I don't want to. There was value in the experience,
Sure, sure.
and there was also tension, and I like to lean into tension. I like to lean into resistance. So, have you read
Yeah.
The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield?
Yeah, I did. I did. I
Okay,
love
one of
that.
my favorite books.
Yeah.
Because I love the concept of leaning into resistance. And so, like, I was feeling that resistance, like, well, wait a minute, like, I talk this way and I do this and I do that. And if I stick to this, like, I would never say those words. Like, why would why would I say that?
Right.
It brought resistance to me. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick around, and I would still be involved in it if my schedule would allow. Because I felt like I could navigate that and be okay with it. Because the pros outweighed the cons for me. Um, and in a space of Strengths Finder, though, I feel like if I didn't have the lens that I have of what strengths and what authenticity really means, I can see where that type of environment can really hinder people from having that level of success that they want because they're not being authentic.
Right.
They're being molded into something, which is another, like, we homeschool our kids and have forever because I feel the same way about education as as Don Clifton does probably. Like,
Yeah.
it's the last place where you're going to be honored for being who you are, in a lot of
Right.
ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's which kind of brings up this whole idea of, like, where do we go from here? Because socially, especially now. I mean, things are so polarizing, and I don't want to get into politics. At the same time, it's impossible to kind of talk about like the social constructs and how people are interacting with each other
Yeah.
without talking about how polarizing the political arena and everything gets politicized now, right? Like
Sure.
vaccine passports or just mask or no like I've had people, are you mask or anti-mask? And I'm like, I'm pro-human. I don't know how to answer that
I'm
question.
I'm pro human. I love
Like,
that. Yeah.
and for people, so if
I'm
you're,
pro free agency. You know what I mean?
yeah, I'm like,
I'm pro freedom of choice. For
yeah,
goodness sakes.
I don't know how to answer that question because I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
have my own personal opinion, and I also work around old people. So maybe in that situation, I'll make a different choice than when I'm with my 7-year-old. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. So do you feel like part of your mission is to help people pull back from that polarizing thing? Because I think when you start to realize how unique individuals are, you start to realize how one size fits all is just such a fool's errand.
Yeah. I do. I have a the big picture for me is to really help the world see something that they're missing, like the Matrix, right? And this can
Okay.
actually go into our discussion about your discussion about the bottom five strengths. So my 34th strength is harmony, and what that means is harmony is not a weakness for me.
Mine too.
Okay, brilliant. So this is
Yeah.
probably why you
So
and
we
I
must be we
like
must be just like each other.
we like playing in this sandbox of helping people see the value of being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there's going to be a lesson there. So I'm grateful for my 34th harmony, and I'm sure I can help you understand this even better too. Is that I'm not afraid to rock the boat. I'm not afraid to put people in discomfort to help them see something that is going to have a long-term benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this: what we grew up trying to find is how we are similar, how we are the same as other people. And you'll see it all over, like people will say, we have more similarities than differences and so on. And yeah, those things are all true, and that's wonderful. And it's not a negative process. But what it does is it constantly focuses us on trying to find how we are similar instead of appreciating our differences,
Mm-hmm.
because we are freaking different.
Yes.
If we spend all of our time trying to find how we are similar, we're going to only tolerate our differences. And tolerating our differences causes us to say, well, there's some things I don't like about you, right? So I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
focus on the things I do like about you. But whenever you're in a place of where you're doing things that bother me, I'm just going to tolerate it. And
Right.
I'm going to say this right now, like that's how marriages end. That's how relationships with really good people end. Like, I feel like if I just went around and only tolerated people's differences, then, I won't want to be around them all the time. Like for
Yeah.
you and I are very different on so many levels. And what I love is those differences. And so when I come to you, I'm looking to appreciate the differences so that I can get value from them, because I would never do what you do.
Right.
And that's how I get to get value from you, because, well, if I would never do it, but there's obvious value to it because you do it, then I get to benefit from that. So
Yeah.
I hope that's not a confusing concept for people, but to
It's
make it simpler.
it's not, and I love it. I just had a conversation with a mentor of mine, and we talked about tolerance and acceptance. And he
Mhm.
took it a step further and said, you know, basically what you said about tolerating, right? Like, to tolerate it, eventually your threshold is going to get
Yeah.
crossed and you can't tolerate it anymore, because tolerating it just means biting your tongue, pushing it down. You're just dealing with the BS, right?
Yeah.
At least that's your
You're
perspective.
missing the value.
Yeah. And so, for me, I'd always kind of thought like I want to get beyond tolerance to acceptance. And what he shared with me was like acceptance means that there was or is something that could be unacceptable.
Right.
And so acceptance isn't enough.
Right. Not
We
enough.
need to embrace. And I
Want
was
it.
like, oh, that's like, okay. And we've had these conversations with our kids because we homeschool, and there's, we don't shield them from a lot of what's going on in the world. We, filter how we talk about it based on their age, but tolerance was a thing, within the last year. And it was like, no, tolerance isn't enough. And I love how you say, like, I want to honor that which is different in you and learn from you when I need those things. Right. And because I agree with you. I mean, there's things I have friends that I look at and I go, what are they thinking sometimes? Because I don't
Yeah.
understand what they're doing. And my
Yeah.
learner has like a bazillion questions to ask. And I will ask those questions and sometimes they get offended. And I'm like, I'm not asking for me to be able to judge you. I'm
Right.
genuinely curious. Help me understand what I'm missing. Help me understand what you're telling me or like why you're making those choices. Because I don't want to change you. I just want to better understand you because
I'm
I just,
seeking to benefit.
yeah. And
I'm
then
seeking to benefit from the difference.
it's always uh shifted my perspective. And it's funny, I hear people all the time say, Facebook is trash, Facebook's toxic. I've never learned anything from Facebook. And I'm like, I learn stuff from Facebook all the time because I'm
Yeah.
open to learning. like like I've never solved a political argument, but I have definitely shifted the way that I see things and sometimes the way that I think about them because I've got new information that I just don't take personally.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I'm wrong. It just means that you're different, right? So there's a
Yeah.
tool that you know about that. Um, Actually, I want to ask a different question first. So you said you don't mind making people uncomfortable,
I don't
and
mind it. No, I don't. I'm
and
not out there to do it, but I don't mind
right, and I don't either. And I lied. Harmony's not my 34th. Maximizer is. I had to check. Uh,
it.
but it's like 32. um,
Low enough.
but yeah, it's way down there. I
Yay.
have no problem making people comfortable. What I struggle with, and what I wonder if you could help me, or anyone else who maybe is listening to this, because I someone brought up to me the other day. They said, you're right, but is it helpful?
Go.
And
Yeah. That's
I
good.
find that like if I can share with somebody a way, not necessarily because for me it's not about right or wrong. It's just about, hey, did you look at it this way? Did you think about this? Maybe you don't have all the information. And when I do share with someone additional information, my intention is not to be right, because I think I have very loose opinions about right and wrong, because
Yeah.
what does that mean? But it's really more to like help others get better or be different, right? And not to, that didn't come out right, but it's like to aid them in improving,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious how you make people uncomfortable and do it with kindness, because you've said things to me and you've said things to my wife, and I've been in a room with you with 40 other people and I've watched the wiggles in the seat and the, I don't, oh, but at the end of that, they all come to you and say, oh my gosh, you made me feel so good. Oh my gosh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And my experience is when I do that, there's wiggles in the seats. And then when I'm done, they scatter. like, so
Yeah.
clearly I need work on this, but I'm curious how you do that, or what your thoughts are on that.
Well, um, if I were to articulate like the steps,
Mm-hmm.
um, when I go into a room with people, I know there's going to be some discomfort, but I also understand that it's not discomfort because what I'm saying is right or wrong. There's only discomfort because of the way people have chosen to live their life. And when I come in with an infinitely unique perspective that we can all only do, then it's going to violate some of those rules. But
Mm.
what I want them to do is see the value in that, and that there's going to be a happy ending in the end of the story.
Okay.
So that's my goal. Okay, I'm going to go in there and say, okay, I'm going to help. You're going to feel some discomfort, and some things are going to ring true. But what I want you to know is that this is a good thing. This is a wonderful process, and I promise you that you're going to be safe at the end of this. Knowing that I have the strengths reports in front of them as a tool is critical, because what I'm helping them do is I want them to honor that. I don't want them to see, like, I don't want them to believe that I'm in there to change them. I don't want to change anybody. Like when I see a person is, let's say a person is alcoholic, all right, is
Okay.
an alcoholic, and I
Okay.
start asking them questions and they start feeling uncomfortable. almost feeling like they're being judged, I want them to understand that I'm not judging them.
Mhm.
If they're feeling judgment, it's only coming from them. What I want them to understand is like, I'm not here to get you to stop drinking alcohol. I'm
Yeah.
here to help you understand what's wonderful about you that ultimately drinking alcohol is a symptom of. And then
Interesting.
when you start to see that, no, so everybody, this is complicated what I'm telling you right now, and I'll go back to the steps, but just to help you understand some principles. When I help you see what's wonderful about you, that drinking alcohol is a symptom of, then you start to go, okay, I get me. Like, I know that people drink alcohol obsessively because there's something inside of them that wants to come out, but they're scared shitless to bring it out.
Yep.
And so it's like, hey, look, either I share what's inside of me without like letting fear get in the way,
Yep.
or I hold it all in and I need alcohol to suppress that
Yes.
because it's burning inside of me.
Having been sober for 18 years, I can say yes.
Right. Okay.
That's
So
it.
I'm just letting them know, hey, I love you. You've got something super important to say and you're scared to say that. And I understand that. I'm not asking you to start talking. I just want you to love and embrace the truth. It's okay. It's all right. And what I do is I want to give people the space to just kind of go, all right, I understand that about me. And now I get the free agency to make a decision. Do I want to keep doing this? Is this really giving me what I want? Or do I want a way out? Then that's cool. We can have that discussion later. But right now, let's just love where you are. So that's the principle. Okay. Now, the
Right.
step by steps is, Keith, I go in, I tell people what I want, and I tell people what I'm afraid of. And I let them know that even though I'm afraid, I'm still here anyway. And what I want to do is use vulnerability as a tool to help people know that just because I'm in front of you doesn't mean I'm above you. It doesn't
Right.
mean I'm above you. You know what I mean? So I constantly use vulnerability as a tool to help people see that I'm not here to judge. I'm here to love. And I'm here to share a perspective. Even if you feel uncomfortable, it's not my intention.
Yeah.
My intention is to share something that I believe will be of value to you. So when I notice that the more vulnerable I am, the more people listen. And even if what I say makes them uncomfortable, which I love to pepper those things in, let them know that there's a happy ending to this, where I'm going to ask them to still love and be who they are and not change.
Yeah. I love
So
it.
I go in with that mindset. I hope that explains it or makes sense.
Definitely. And you said something that I want to dig a little bit deeper on, because I had this epiphany, and you kind of just said what I came to realize probably a year and a half ago. We did I did a seminar based on Brene Brown's book Dare to Lead.
Great book.
The phenomenal book.
Oh gosh.
So it might have been 2 years ago now that we did this seminar, and it was just a real intimate, like 15 people one day, and
Wow.
I took that and then came and did a couple of them with our team and with some other people, and we opened it up, and it was basically to help you kind of like drill down into your core values, right? And to get really understanding how to rumble, right? She talks about rumbling, and so we kind of did this seminar on how to rumble. And
I love
in
that
that seminar,
awesome.
yeah, well, it's important. Like, you gotta know how to rumble, right? There's rules to how you fight, right?
I love that.
And not that it's
Okay.
fighting, but like there's rules of engagement is what I'm thinking.
Sure.
What I came up with was that, like, one of my core values is freedom. And that's in personal agency, right? That's in a lot of it's not the typical, like, yes, Braveheart, freedom, I'm all for it. And what I came to realize was that in finding my own core value of agency, all the things I thought or judgments I had around other people went away. Because if my core value is that I need to be who I am, then I absolutely have to honor who other people are, even if they're opposite end
Even
of
if
what I
even if
am.
they don't agree.
Yeah. And so, like, that, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about like how infinitely unique you are, and you're kind of getting pumped up and proud, which you should be, recognize that also means that the person that you probably disagree with is infinitely unique and needs to be left left to be infinite. Like
hear them or
yeah.
don't, whatever, but don't ask them to be something they're not. Look for the value. My
And
goodness.
that's the thing, right? Is like finding the value and letting them be who they are, And that doesn't mean that you have to be besties. Like, there's people I know that I love dearly that I spend less time with than maybe others because they are, but I don't disparage them. I have this, it's a really weird how like we try to empower one group by disempowering another. And that's like this cultural thing that's happening right now where it's like,
Yeah.
I want to get my power back, but in order for me to do that, I have to take yours. And it's like, well, wait, why can't I have mine and you have yours? And like, we just be cool. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand where to empower one, we have to take from other. Like, there's just this pie with with a finite number of, you know, coins. I think
Value or coins or
yeah,
money
we're
or
playing
whatever.
Super
Yeah.
Mario here, right? Like, you get all
Yeah.
the coins and I don't have any, and like, why? I can have all I want. The other thing that you said that I want to unpack with you a little bit is you brought up loving what is. And I know that that's a book that you love, and Byron Katie's
It's
like
my
the
favorite
work.
book of all time.
So I really want you to kind of share what or how that's influenced you. Because one of the things I like to do is ask people that I interview, like, what's a book that shifted your life? I don't need to ask you because I already know the answer.
Yeah, we already know this one.
But I want you to kind of share why or what was it in there that you like? What was the aha moment? What was the biggest takeaway?
Well, the one thing I could say about this book is that, and when I first read it, I listened to it, which I would recommend people listen to it versus reading the physical book. But then again, maybe that's just how I like to read books or consume books.
Same.
Because what I loved learning about this book is the inflections of the people that Byron Katie was working with in the book, like their voice inflections, hearing them respond versus just what they say when they respond and so on. But what the other thing is that when I read the book, it messed me up for a while. And what I mean by mess me up, it's like when you look at how Tiger Woods changed his golf swing, right? He's like, okay, I feel like the way I'm going, I've hit a limit and I have to adjust things in order to go past that limit, which required him to, lower his results for a while. And like, that was like, to me, it was like super inspiring that man had the guts to lower his scores and lower his results in an effort to go past where he was before.
Yep.
So at the time I wasn't grateful, like we talked about before, right? But hindsight being 2020, I'm grateful for that. I would say about 3 to 6 months, it messed me up because of the way it was being told to me. I was misunderstanding it. But once I understood it, this is the outcome was everything that I want other people to do for me. It is my responsibility to do for me, and then equally in the same amount, do for others. Like, for example, if I want people to really give me a chance, like if I say, okay, I want people to give me a chance. I want people to not look at me as say, well, this guy's no Tony Robbins. Why the hell should I listen to him? Like, if I want people to not judge me for that, then I have to not judge me for that.
Yep.
Right? That's first. Okay. So if I don't judge me for that, then I'm free to go ahead and speak. But then I also need people to know that even though I'm not judging myself for not being Tony Robbins, then I have to not judge them for not being Tony Robbins. Right? And say, okay, I'm not going to judge you because you've got something important to say. So what that did was it made me a better listener. Instead of wanting to just blast people with the information that I have because I don't feel I'm good enough.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I became a better listener, which was what my journey about understanding strengths was, I became a much more powerful speaker. And then it just kept going down that road. Every time I speak, I'm like, you tell me what you're taking away from this. You tell me what you're getting from this. Tell me what this means to you, because I'm ready for you to tell me that this didn't resonate. I'm ready for you to tell me that you didn't take anything away from it or whatever. And now I'm free to give you space to give me feedback that would have normally triggered me, but now it's making me better. So that's what loving what is basically did, was it allowed me the freedom. Every time I got angry because somebody wasn't doing something for me, I realized, oh, I'm not doing that for me, and I'm not doing that for other people.
Yeah.
Like,
Interesting.
It gave me something to do when I wasn't happy getting when I wasn't getting what I felt I needed.
Yeah.
I gave it to myself and then I gave it to others. Like that is huge, right? What do I want?
Yeah.
I want more money. Okay, so accept more money and
Yep.
help other people accept it, right? I want more. I want people to here's my favorite. I want to feel valued. Okay, I want to feel valued. Okay, then see your value, Eddie. Spend time understanding what's wonderful about you, and
Yeah.
then invest the same amount of desires into seeing what's wonderful about others, not about what's broken or what's wrong.
Yeah.
This is why I love strength so much, because it only allows me to see value. And I
Yeah.
have gotten to the point now where I don't even see man or woman anymore. I don't see old or young, fat or skinny, pretty or ugly. All I see is what's wonderful about you. Because if I stop seeing the value in other people, it's because I have stopped seeing the value in me. And thus, I am only out
Interesting.
there blasting people with information, praying that they'll say, Eddie, I love you. Because I
Yeah.
don't need that. I already tell myself that. And I tell other people, I love you, even when you piss me off.
Yeah.
I know that that pissed me off is a symptom of what's going on in here, up inside of me.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for those.
That's amazing. It's one of the most powerful books I've ever read, and I listened to it on a long drive, and I mean I had to pull over at one point because I was in tears, and then I probably got about three-quarters of the way through, and I pulled over again, and I called my wife, and I was like, whatever you're listening or reading or whatever development you're in the middle of, table it, read this, because I was on a business trip. So when I get home, this is becoming like, a core thing for us because there's so much value in it, and we've shared it with so many people. And for those of you who don't know, Byron Katie's got a great YouTube channel, and I agree with you. Listening to it, this gets a little woo woo, right? But there frequencies exist, frequencies are real, and how we receive things is important. And there is value in listening to this book because of those inflections and hearing her speak those words to you. And it's so hard to, like, just through a podcast and talking about it, really drive home some of the stuff, because it confronted me. I mean, I had to really, like you said, like, it was a couple months of like, no, I'm not, that's not my stuff. They did that, right? And there's so many things for it. And even my wife was like, did she just say what I think she's it's like, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
awesome.
that's helped me understand discomfort. That book made me very uncomfortable because it broke a lot of
100%.
the rules that I was living by.
Yeah.
But that's the point. That's
Yeah.
the
It
point.
really breaks down some walls and shifts. If you're open to it and you're open to listening to, because I've given it to other people who've listened to it and said, this is bullshit. This isn't right. And I'm like, okay, cool. But then years
That
later,
blows
they're
my mind.
still struggling, right? And it's like, it's not that it's BS, it's that you're not open to listening to a different perspective, because it really does make you think about the lies you've been telling yourself. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm responsible. Oh, and for some people that's really hard, or it's disempowering. For me, when I got to a place where I recognized that, like, I was the creator of all my biggest struggles, like, it was super empowering, because then I was like, oh, well, then I can be the creator of all the solutions.
Yeah,
I get
brilliant.
to choose which one of
Totally.
these do I want. Well, I want to solve the problem, so let's get to work, right? It was super easy. So yeah, I love it, man.
That's a
Talk to me
great thing to be
about
able to look at that.
what's that?
That's a great way to look at those things. Like if I'm willing to accept that I suck, that means I can be equally willing to accept that I'm amazing.
That's it. That's it. It's a choice.
Yeah.
I said something to my wife the other day, and she got really upset with me, and was like, that was insulting. And I said, well, I was just goofing around. I said, let's back that up. What about that was an insult? Like,
Yeah.
take those 6 words. Are those 6 words an insult, or was it that you received it? And I've done the same thing, so I'm not picking on my wife at all. She's
Sure.
the reason I exist, in a lot of ways.
Right.
But just as an example of how we choose to receive data or input, right? Like, and then she laughed at me and she was like, all right, knock it off, leave me alone, you're doing the work on me. I was like, I'm just saying, like, it's just information.
Yeah.
but how we choose to receive that information, that's our choice. You know, Viktor Frankl is attributed to this quote, but there's some controversy around whether or not he actually said it. And it's between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is your freedom to choose.
Oh, yes.
And it's so like, I heard that and was like, oh, if we can all figure out how to spend just a second in that space to make different choices,
or even expand the space,
to
make a conscious decision to be authentic in that choice.
Yeah. Just, take a breath. And I think if you develop that skill, because it is a skill, right? And to be able
to be worked on. It has to be
developed. Yeah. It's so good. I mean, that was just so freeing to go between stimulus and response. There's that space, and you get to choose what the response is versus react, right? Because so many of us just react. We hear something, we see something, we react. And then I think a lot of us go back and go, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish, once you have time to actually like marinate or think, oh, it's not everything I thought it was.
Yeah. That's a universal truth, by the way. This is what I love about studying great thought leaders is they've tapped into what I call universal truths, where it doesn't matter who's talking about it. Everybody knows it's true. It applies to everything. In fact, like what you just said, I've heard Wayne Dyer talk about, where he just says the space between our thoughts and our actions, right? Just that, like the gap in between there. And if we could expand it so that we can have time to really understand the thought and then act authentically in a way that's going to be valuable to the people around us. Man, if we could and so this is where meditation comes in, right?
Yep.
Meditation is how we create that space. If we meditate consistently. And now I'm realizing shit, like when I'm struggling, I always go back and go, damn it, I haven't meditated in weeks or months or whatever. Like, duh, Eddie, come on. Remember that. There's a reason why you do the little things.
Yeah. Like it's a muscle.
Yeah.
It's a tool. Totally. You've got to train it. And honestly, one of the things that because I know there's people listening to this probably that they got a bunch of kids and they got full-time jobs and they got stuff. Like, I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to work out, let alone, I don't have time to cook healthy meals, let alone, add meditation in my day.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me because I'm so grateful for the business that we've created and the lifestyle we've created, because more than anything, the time freedom that I can take the time to meditate. I can take the time, and meditation doesn't need to be like an hour or even 20 minutes, like 5 minutes sitting in the parking lot before you enter your job, or 5 minutes in the driveway before you come home from work. Just the deep breathing will clear some of that stuff, right? You can make the time, one less episode of Game of Thrones or whatever you're watching these days. Who knows? It's funny when I talk to people and they're like, well, I don't have time for that. And then I'm like, okay, well, we'll see if we can help coach you through that or figure that out. And then you talk to them and you find out they watched 4 hours of, or they watched the new Justice League cut in one sitting. It's like, well, gosh, man, I could have recorded 2 podcasts in that.
And see, what I would do is say, okay, hey, when you're watching Justice League, which by the way, amazing.
So good.
So good. When you're watching Justice League, ask yourself, what is it what are you doing when you're watching? Like, what I love watching stories, movies, like I just watched Star Trek 3, the Search for Spock. Okay. Which most people hate, right? And I understand now after I watched it again. But like, why are you watching it? And if you're asking a person to meditate, ask them, okay, why are you watching? So one of the things I'm bringing up Search for Spock, but the same thing happened in Justice League or even Star Wars, is I like learning these little morality lessons that inspire me. And so I'm going to tell everybody what happened in Search for Spock to help you like turn this movie into this like super inspiring thing. So what happened was in Search for Spock, Kirk finds out that when Spock died, he left his katra, right? They call it katra inside of McCoy, which really means like his spirit, his essence, it's still alive. In other words, Spock is still alive, right? Okay, cool. But Kirk finds out that nobody buys into his belief that we got to get McCoy back to the Genesis planet to retrieve Spock's body, which is being regenerated by the Genesis planet, and get McCoy's the Katra inside of McCoy into the body of Spock that's growing and bring Spock back to life. That's the MacGuffin. This is the thing that we got to do. But nobody believes him. Nobody buys it. The whole Starfleet says, hell no. Genesis is forbidden. You can't even talk about it. You can't go. And so like, this is like a life lesson. I'm like watching this movie going, why don't I love this movie more? This is exactly what we're all trying to do. We have this vision for the connections that we want with the right people, but everybody is in our way telling us that we're crazy. And so what does Spock do? He gets his crew, his small crew that he is connected with. So we've got McCoy and Chekhov and Scotty and of course Uhura, right? This little crew, they're okay. You know, we believe in this. We're gonna rock this. And at the end of the movie, Kirk loses Starfleet, his ability to be admiral. He loses admiral status. The Enterprise blows up, right? He has to destroy the Enterprise. His son dies, right? And at the end of the movie, he does it. He does the thing. And Sarek comes up to Kirk and says, Kirk, why did you do this? You lost Starfleet. You lost your ship that everybody loves, the Enterprise. You lost your son at the cost of all those things. What made you do this? And he said, if I didn't, it would have cost my soul.
Man.
It would have cost my soul. And I'm like, that's why I watched the movie. That's why I watched Justice League or I watched Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me that, okay, Eddie, you're destined for more. And so for me, that was my meditation.
Yeah.
Right. And so, okay, cool. All right. Well, obviously I love meditating because I watched Star Trek III: The Search for Spock.
Which I don't think I've ever seen. So
okay. This is a like, okay, so people who probably never seen it, it doesn't matter. You understand the principle.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean, you drive the point home that like, how many of us are willing, because having not seen the movie and listening to you explain it, one, you know, the passion that you present that with is amazing. And so it's clear that like it moves you. The other thing is like, it makes me think about how many things do we not pursue that we know we should.
Yeah.
Because everyone else is telling us it's nuts, it's crazy, you can't, we're not doing it, the risk is too great, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, it's
we also forget about our circle. There are people who will roll with us.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will probably say, no one will roll with us. That's not true.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't pick up on that.
Well, they skip over it quickly in the movie. See, for those of you who don't know anything about Star Trek, Kirk and Spock are very different. Kirk's very passionate and impulsive, and Spock is very analytical and calculated.
Measured, yeah.
And these two should not have been best friends, but they are. And in the movie, you saw from Wrath of Khan, at the end of Wrath of Khan, Spock tells Kirk, I am and always shall be your friend. Oh, like I just get like goosebumps. And I think about this. It's such a wonderful relationship between these two men. And they're embracing their differences. You know what I mean? Like they're freaking embracing their differences. This is universal, man.
Yeah.
And
even when they're super frustrated with each other. And you see it
all the time, constantly. They're constantly frustrating each other. Spock's like, I don't understand why you act so impulsively. And Kirk's like, I don't understand why you don't just do. Yeah, everything has to be a freaking calculation. So when Kirk's like, I'm going to do this, instantly his crew that he's been working with, they were just like, we're coming with you. And he says in the scene, good, because I'm going to need you. There's a scene where it skips over this part really quickly because we already assume they love each other. They're going to support each other in this crazy venture of throwing everything away that we've earned in this Starfleet Academy.
Yep.
You know, and they're just like, we're going to do this with you because we love him too. And that's the thing. They all missed Spock. They all missed him. They all, even though he was a pain in the ass, they missed him because they saw the value in the difference. And so all of them were we're willing to sacrifice everything for him because at the end of Wrath of Khan, you're going to love this, Keith. Spock tells everybody, like when Kirk says, why did you do this? Why did you sacrifice yourself so that we could all live? At the end of Wrath of Khan, and Spock says, because the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few or the one, right?
Mhm.
So in the third movie, when he brings him back, Spock is like, why did you do this? And Kirk says, because the needs of the one outweighed the needs of the many. He tells him that.
Wow.
He flips it on him. And it's because every one of those people in that little
Wow.
circle said, like, the need of you was more important than our needs. The one. And that was like, I was like, I don't know why I didn't like this movie for so long. I love this movie now that I've kind of put it into this context. I want other people to watch it because I want everybody to see this is how you go and you do things. And yeah, people on the outside world are not going to like it, or they're going to reject it unless they choose to see the value for it. And that's where we go, hey, look, I'm going to love on you for being different than me. And even you don't understand what I'm trying to do, I want you to know I'm doing it because I care about you, even if you don't get it.
Yeah. That's so good. And I just, for me, it's like, oh, okay, so how do we help other people figure out how to live that way? Right. And
how do we help
for,
other people figure out how to live that way?
Yeah.
Like that's the mission, right?
Like that's the goal, right? So like
goal.
For you, it's through strengths. It's through the programs and the things that you put together. For me right now, it's like this podcast, helping people recognize that like your freedom lies in your ability to recognize your own uniqueness and your own agency, and then honor that in everybody else, right? And through my experience, right? And I think it's such a crazy thing because I'm a pretty judgmental guy. Like you're so good at seeing people for what they're good at. And I still have I recognize this. I'm better at it than I was, and I still have a lot of work to do on myself to remove some of those judgments and like, just to strip away some of that stuff, and I'm still working toward that. Because I do still see men and women and fat and ugly and beautiful. And like, I'm not there yet. Like you say that and I'm like, okay, that's amazing. Cause that gives me a place to work toward.
Yeah.
And
it's the perfect existence, which I haven't mastered, but I'm on the journey of getting better at it. I'm practicing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, as you talk about it, I recognize, that I'm just not there yet. And to me, that's not, I don't feel shame in that. I feel empowered because then I go, okay, now I know things that I can work toward, because I truly believe that like there's two states of being in nature, and it's growth or decay. So I get to choose. Am I going to just go, oh, well, Eddie's cooler than me, so I suck and that's it? Or do I get to go, hey, Eddie's working towards a goal that I think is really amazing, and I get to choose to also work toward that. Right.
Well, I'm looking at this as like, well, what's scarier, right? Seeing a journey, seeing the path that is hard and difficult to overcome or go through, or being lost and not seeing a path at all. Yeah. Like what's scarier, or what is more disempowering, right? Not seeing a path, being completely lost, or seeing the path and knowing, that's gonna be hard, but I can see where it's going, and I want to be on the other end of that.
Yeah.
Like, even though like if I might procrastinate or stare at it and go, I don't know if I can do this, does that more hopeful than being lost?
Yeah.
Like for me, if things aren't going the way I want and I can't see a path, that's terrifying. Yeah. Like that scares the absolute crap out of me. And I'm willing to feel like some self-judgment if I'm exposed to a path and knowing that, oh man, I'm not even close to being first in this path.
Yeah.
I'm way behind. That was how I was with strengths. When I first got into strengths, I saw people that were way better than me. And I was like, I had a moment where like, I think other people are better at this, Eddie. Maybe this is not your thing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but it's the only path I see. And so I put my head down and went to work.
Yeah, that's where I'm at, because like we really need another podcast on the planet.
Yeah.
Like seriously, there's bazillions of them. And when I had the idea, when I got the ping that I needed to do a podcast, I was like, well, that's just dumb, because why do the thing that 7 million other people are doing?
There are millions of podcasts out
there. I mean, I literally was just like, it's like, okay, the snowflake and the avalanche kind of thing, and was like, okay, that was stupid. And then like, I mean, seriously, like every day it would be like, so it could look like this and it could look like that. And I could turn the
Yeah.
basement into, and I was like, why are you still thinking about that? Like I'm having this push pull in my head. Like, why are you still having this conversation? It's the dumbest thing to do. And like, who do you think you are? And like, why would you do this? And it was just like, it kept, and then I was like, oh, well, maybe if I built the web, or maybe I'll do this and I'll play with, and then it just like rolls because you see the thing and you just kind of get pulled into it. And it's so crazy because I mean,
Oh,
by the
love
time
it.
this airs or gets this will probably go up in like 2 or 3 weeks, and I've got I've got guests booked through June. Like it's crazy to me. Like,
Right on.
and it's all people I can't wait to talk to. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna put everybody up the same day. I just and then you got to be strategic and like people tell you like, oh, you got to do this or you got to do that, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's good info. I'm just gonna do what I'm doing, and
Yeah.
it'll draw. And I'm blessed to have human beings in my life that are like supportive or willing to give up part of their time. I honestly believe time is like the most valuable asset. And so that you'll share an
It really
hour
is.
or two of your day to help us do this and help me launch this crazy project is amazing. And thank you for that. Um, I want to talk hats
Okay.
and I want to talk about your wife
All right.
because
Brilliant.
the two of you are relative. I mean, like similar to Carrie and I. Like you guys are pretty different people.
You
Not
mean
just
different between her and I?
yeah. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
just like you
Very,
guys are infinitely unique. Like you guys are like
very.
very, very different. And you got 7 kids together, right? Are they
Well, we have 6 together. I had one before her and I got married.
okay? Okay. And so you're raising a large family together.
Mhm.
That's no small feat. I mean, that's I've got 8
Right.
children. It's exhausting. Um, and it's amazing. Uh, but I'd love to hear about how you guys navigate that. Obviously, strengths has improved it, you know.
Massively. But
Um,
yeah. So you want me to talk about how what
yeah,
that looks like?
just what's that?
Yeah.
What's
So
what's
let me
it
start
like
with
having
how we're
a
different.
partner who's a powerhouse of her own,
Oh gosh, yes. Like
right?
I have to wake up every morning going, Eddie, this is a good thing.
Right. Okay. Because my wife is also a powerhouse. I mean, I've literally been at events where people have physically pushed me out of the way to get to my wife. And I'm like, I exist, right? Like I'm
Yes, I know that feeling.
so she's a powerhouse. I mean, people love her. She walks into a room and it lights up and everybody turns and looks her way, you know. And so there are moments where it's like, you got to go, this is a good thing
Yeah,
and
it
have
is.
gratitude to be a part of it.
Sometimes I'm Eddie Villa, and sometimes I'm Angela's husband.
Yep.
Totally, like that happens.
Yes.
Um, but I'll say the greatest day and one of the greatest days of my life was when we attended a big doTERRA event and somebody referred to Angela as Eddie's wife. Man, Keith, I cannot tell you how good that felt. And when I looked at my wife, how uncomfortable it made her.
Yeah. I
And
bet.
and by the way, this is a good thing. Hey everybody, this is a good thing. Stop with the judgments. This is the good thing. So let me just share real quick how we're different because I think this will be funny. My wife is the kind of person, so she's an executor, but just to help everyone understand what that means is she's the one that's her job is to make sure everything is done the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why that's her job is because those are her strengths. She's got lots of strengths that are like all about making sure things are done the right way. And it's also her job to let everyone know when things aren't being done the right way. That's her job because that's what she does. Again, loving what is. My job is to be the strategic one, the thinker, the analyzer, the one who tries to see how we could do things better. We both agree on the fact that people should move forward, but rather than focusing on our similarities, I want to like see the difference in our the power in our differences. So when there's a problem in the house, I will go take a walk. And when there's a problem in the house for Angela, Angela will tell everybody they're doing things wrong. Right?
Oh,
Things
that's
are
why
being
I
done
like
wrong.
her.
Oh God, it's like, oh, I get it. Thank you. But if I go for a walk, it's like, huh? What am I supposed to do while you're on a walk? Hey, it's none of my business. But anyway, so when Angela when things aren't going right in the home, I have theories and Angela has judgments. Okay.
Well,
What
say
that
that
way,
again.
I have theories and
Okay.
Angela has judgments. Again, everybody, stop with the what's good or what's bad. It's not about that.
Yep.
It's about how is this good? So when everything's not going the right way, the kids hear Angela, right? And don't see me.
Bro, you are describing my house right now, but I'm
Right.
Angela and Carrie is you.
Okay. So the kids hear Angela and they don't see me because I take off. Sometimes I take off mentally. I could even be there physically, but I'm gone mentally. And Angela talks out loud. And so on the outside, I can see how people would think her way is she's more powerful because it looks like I'm more reserved. But actually, both of us are doing the same work, but completely different ways.
This goes back to the strengths tells you how
And loving what is. It's like
and
both
loving
of
what
them at the
is.
same time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Love
And
it.
so, which is why I'm so grateful that I got exposed to that book when I did. I needed it because then
Yeah.
when strengths came in, it made sense. I knew what to do with it. But anyway, so if the kids look at what Angela's doing, is like, oh, that's bad because you're telling me I'm a failure, and I start internalizing it. Okay, that's one response. But they could also look at me in the same way, like, oh, dad's gone again. Dad doesn't care. Dad doesn't want to help me. Dad's disconnected. And so now I'm losing touch with both of my parents. I got my mom judging me and my dad disappearing. Right.
Yep.
So like that's our differences. But what are the values of those differences? Well, the value is that when mom's trying to solve problems, she speaks and she does. When dad's trying to solve problems, he thinks and he processes or analyzes. But both of us are trying to come to the same conclusion, which is how do we make this better? Right? How do we make this better? Because that's the truth. Both of us want things to be better.
Yeah.
But we go about it in totally different ways. So when my wife is yelling at me and she's getting frustrated because I'm not responding the same way she does, she's missing the value of how I solve problems that she wants to solve.
Yeah.
And when I see her just yelling without thinking this through, then I'm missing the value of how she solves problems. Okay. So now we get into this point of, okay, well, how does strengths come in? Well, I look at Angela's strengths and I see how they're a value, even though I would never do things that way. And that's not how I solve problems. And then I help her see the value of how I do things my way. And it's not the way she would do it, but there's how I solve problems.
Yeah.
And what we do is we communicate and we talk about this. So it's like, Eddie, like when I'm going back to the meditation thing, Eddie, why do you watch movies? Because I want to meditate. Right. Well, why don't you meditate? Well, because this is my meditation.
This is my meditation. Yeah.
So when Angela sees me watching movies, she goes, oh, Eddie's meditating.
Nice. You just gave every husband on the planet a new reason to play Xbox. I'm meditating.
Well, okay, whatever
Whatever
like,
works.
We meditate all day or what? I don't know.
But there's value. There's so much value in that. And so do you talk to your kids? Do you explain to your kids? Because you said the word communicate, which to me is like the cornerstone of a healthy marriage is communication and respect. But the communication piece, you can't respect each other if you don't know what they're thinking, right? Like, so the communication piece for me is like the cornerstone. And I wonder if you guys, because you've obviously talked to each other about this and you figured out each other this way, but you touched on a really important thing that like your kids could perceive, right? And we know from Loving What Is that like we create stories. We create our own stories around why dad did X or why mom did X.
Yeah.
So do you guys communicate that to your children that like, hey, this is how dad, like I'm not present. I'm here, but I'm in my head.
Oh, I'm crazy.
The same work that mom is doing.
Yeah.
Vocally.
I'm here on a massive level. So much that I'm in my head, which is where my strengths are.
Yep.
This is where I am most effective. So it may look to you like I'm distant, but I'm actually very present.
Right.
It's just looks differently. So we talk about strengths every day in our home. And it's,
I'm sure,
like it just happens. And it's not because we force it. Okay, let's talk about strengths now, everybody. No, that never happens. It just always comes up.
Yeah.
So my oldest daughter, who wants to be a certified strengths coach now, which is awesome, she brings it up a lot because she's so fascinated with it.
Yeah.
And then
she's probably figuring it all out while she's talking.
She really is.
Yeah.
It helped. So we just did a podcast last night. So for those, go listen to Unleash Your Teen podcast, where her and her mom talk about their differences. And we really, in that conversation, helped them bring the two of them even closer together during the podcast. It was really beautiful.
So cool.
But it's because they're embracing why they're different. And so what I do is I educate my kids on how dad does things. How does dad solve problems? You know what I mean? Like, how does dad figure things out when he really cares? So that my kids see when I do things like take a walk or whatever, it's because I want to love them at such a high level, right? And this is my best way of doing that. And so when my kids see me do those things, they're thinking, okay, dad wants to love me right now. So much so that he's taking a walk. And I know that while he's taking a walk, he's thinking about me and my problems, and he wants to help me and support me.
And if you didn't communicate that to them or share that with them, they would have no idea.
They would have no idea.
This
And
is,
yeah,
I think this is a really great place to sort of bring it to a close
sure.
because, I, like, I think parents, especially fathers, are so afraid of appearing weak that they don't say to their kids, like, this is how I'm doing this. Like, for you to be able to go to your kids and say, when I go for a walk, I'm thinking about how to solve these problems. I'm thinking how to show up best for you, how to help you be the best you. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I need to separate and figure it out this way. Mom operates this way, so she may vocalize everything while she's figuring it out, right? There's such vulnerability in that. And like, your I have to imagine that your kids are able to then see those things. And even though, like, maybe they'll be like, well, I don't want dad to go for a walk, I want dad to sit here with me and hold my hand and tell me it's going to be okay. They know because you've explained it to them and been honest and, oh my gosh, authentic with them,
Vulnerable, very
and
vulnerable. Yeah.
and said, this is how I process, and I do this because it's who I am. And by honoring whom I am, I can discover how to help you and the family unit be the best that it can be.
Yeah.
Where I feel like so many parents feel like they have to act like they have their shit together,
Right.
and not let their kids know, like, hey, I'm human, man. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been in this experience before.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that communication and the ability to, like, apologize to your kid if maybe you did get it wrong on Tuesday and you figured it out by Friday. Like, it's such a huge thing, man.
Well, my
That's
hope is
so
that
good.
my hope is that my kids realize that they don't need to be perfect. You know, I speak with certainty when I talk. That's just my self-assurance strength. That's how I operate.
Mm-hmm.
My number 5 strength is self-assurance. So I speak with certainty because that's the only way I know how to talk. And even if I don't know, or even like I'm not really certain about what I'm talking about, I only speak in one way. So my kids automatically think that I'm like not sensitive, or I don't make mistakes.
Yeah. Or that you're always right. You think you're always right.
Yeah. And so, and I hate when I see this, but one of the things that makes me cry is listening to my wife sing. The first time I ever heard Angela sing, she sang a song called Vienna, and she sang it in the way Linda Eder sings it. If you ever want to listen to a song, listen to Linda Eder's version of Vienna. But I was telling my kids about the day I fell in love with their mother. And it was because I saw her singing on stage, and I immediately said, I need this woman in my life. But as I was telling them the story and we're listening to Vienna on the radio, tears start going down my face. And my kids literally looked at me and said, I've never seen dad cry. And my first thought is like, why? I cry all the freaking time. At least I thought I did. But it's because I speak with certainty so much. Like, kids don't know that I'm this big bubbling, blubbering mess of emotions.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that when I'm being vulnerable, like in these moments where I'm telling my kids, I'm a mess, I'm not perfect. And guess what that means? That you don't have to be in order to raise a family. I'm hoping that they get that message. Like, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all together. If you want a family, build a family. Don't wait until you're perfect. Don't have to wait until you've got all, you know what I mean? Because the last thing, because kids, especially at a certain age, they start comparing themselves unfairly.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I want to do is I want to compare them fairly. Like, hey, you're different than me, but you don't have to have it all together to be a dad who speaks with certainty, or a mom who speaks with, command.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the Via household is pretty, I mean, you guys are both
It's loud,
I could only imagine.
very
I could,
loud.
and you're large humans too. I mean, you're not,
We're all tall.
you're all tall. Everybody's over 6 foot. I mean, you guys are just, it's a loud, and I imagine it's tons of fun. But it's like anything else. The inverse is also true. Like when it gets chaotic, it's probably chaotic.
Oh, it's intense.
Yeah.
And I would say the average person would just make their way out,
Yeah. Well, I think our
because it just
household is
gets intense.
similar. Like we got a ton of kids, and there's so much energy there that we have friends come over and spend time with us, and it's like, they've got a kid, and I know it's just overwhelming. It's like wow, it's crazy. But I think this is a really great place to wrap it up, man. You've been amazing. You've dropped so much great knowledge. I'm so grateful for you and all the work that you're doing. And tell us one more time where to get the book, where to find your stuff, how to connect, so that we can help keep moving people forward.
All right. So unleashyourstrengths.net is where you get the book. It is now available in physical form, and you get the audiobook version for free, which is pretty cool.
It's very
Totally
cool.
love that. So you don't have to buy it twice. And you can get that now. The story of me, getting fired and all that other stuff. I've written a second book, which will be coming out at the end of this year. That book is called Unleashed: Fired Twice and Freedom Forever. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for people to read that. And then, of course, follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And then, of course, go to unleashyourstrengths.com, where you can learn about our community, where we've created a place where people can come and learn these things on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
I've learned it's important to have a place where people can consistently come to keep being reminded that they're wonderful. We need that because we have so many people in the world trying to make you forget that, because you become more controllable when you don't know how wonderful you truly are. And there are people out there that's what they do. They hit you with it every single day on social media, the news. That's what they're trying to do, is constantly convince you you're not good enough. And that's what I'm fighting against. And so that's why I had to create that community, so people have that place. So unleashyourstrengths.net for the book.com for the community.
There you go. You don't have to be perfect. You're infinitely unique. And Eddie and I both love you. So go out there and make it happen.